You said it perfectly. You've presented the data. You've made the logical case for why marketing and operations need to align. Yet nothing changes. Here's the truth that most leadership books won't tell you. Logic doesn't reduce bias. Connection does. I'm Dr. Cara, and today I'm sharing the exact storytelling framework I use with Fortune 500 executives to break through bias and create genuine cross-functional alignment. Not through force, but through narrative. Let's start with why your carefully crafted logical arguments keep failing. When you present data to a biased brain, and all our brains are biased, by the way, you're essentially asking someone to give up their story for yours. And humans don't do that easily. Your CFO has spent 20 years crafting a narrative about financial prudence. Your CMO has built a career on a story about bold moves and brand building. When these two sit in a meeting, they're not just presenting different opinions, they're defending their entire professional identity. This is what I call narrative entrenchment. You can't logic your way out of it. When leaders try to overcome resistance with more data, it actually increases defensive because data feels like an attack on identity. So what's the alternative? Strategic storytelling that creates a bigger narrative both parties can live in. The framework I use has 4 movements, and each one is designed to systemically reduce bias by expanding perspectives. Movement 1, the recognition story. Know your worth. Start by recognizing value in each perspective before challenging it. Instead of, finance, you're being too conservative. Try, tell me the story of a time when being financially cautious saved this organization. What did you see that others missed? You're not asking them to abandon their bias. You're asking them to tell you the story of why that bias exists. This does something profound. It separates the person from the position. Their caution isn't a personality flaw. It's a learned response from experience. Once you can honor that, you can work with it. Movement 2, the grace story. Know your truth. This is where you introduce complexity without creating defensiveness. Here's what I'm noticing. Finance has a story about protection. Marketing has a story about growth. Both stories are true and incomplete. What's the truth that sits between the two of them? The word "and" is doing the heavy lifting here. You're not creating an either-or binary. You're creating a space for both truths to coexist. That's how you reduce bias, by extending the narrative container. Movement 3, know when to pivot. Now you introduce a scenario that requires both perspectives. Let me share a story about a company I worked with. They were facing a decision remarkably similar to ours. Finance wanted to wait, marketing wanted to move. They did something interesting. They asked, what's the smallest step that we could take that will give us more information without betting the whole farm? You're using storytelling to model the pivot, showing what it looks like to honor multiple perspectives while still moving ahead. Movement 4, the integration story. This is where you co-create a new narrative. Given everything we've discussed, if you were writing a story of how our organization navigated this moment brilliantly, integrating financial wisdom with market opportunity, what would that story look like? You notice the shift? You're no longer asking people to defend their bias. You're asking them to imagine together. That's when bias reduction becomes possible. Let me show you this framework in a real scenario. I worked with a healthcare system where clinical teams and administrative teams were completely siloed. Clinicians saw administrators as bureaucrats who don't understand patient care, and administrators saw clinicians as idealists who ignored the financial reality that they faced. Classic bias deadlocks. Here's what we did. Recognition story. I asked each side to tell the story of why their perspective matters. Clinicians shared stories of patients who needed care that paperwork delayed. Administrators shared stories of units that had to close because costs weren't managed. Suddenly, both sides saw the intention behind each bias was actually protecting what they all cared about, the patients. Great story, I asked. What if both stories are true? What if we need both excellent care and financial stability? What becomes possible when we stop treating these as competing narratives? The pivot story. I shared a story about another hospital system that created a joint decision-making committee where every major decision required both a clinical impact story and a financial impact story. Not one or the other, both. Integration story. We are the organization that proves excellent care and financial health aren't opposites. They're partners. Within 6 months, the healthcare system reduced interdepartmental conflicts and increased patient satisfaction. Not because anyone changed their functional expertise, because they changed their shared story. Next time you face a cross-functional resistance, try this. Instead of presenting your position, tell 3 stories. Let me tell you why I understand your perspective. Recognition. Here's what I'm seeing that you might not be seeing. Grace. Let me share what happened when another team faced this exact dilemma. Pivot. Then ask, if you were advising us from the outside, knowing both stories, what would you recommend? This removes the ego from the equation and invites wisdom. That's when bias starts to dissolve. Bias reduction isn't about eliminating differences. It's about creating a story big enough to hold all the differences in the room. And as a leader, your job isn't to have all the answers. It's to tell the stories that help people see beyond their functional blind spots and connect to something larger. If this framework resonates with you and you want to go deeper into my framework for connected leadership, check out the resources in the description below. I've got a comprehensive guide on implementing storytelling strategies in your area. What's the biggest cross-functional challenge that you're facing right now? What stories are colliding in your organization? Let me know in the comments. And remember, connect to yourself so that you can elevate and expand for those you lead.